Good morning and welcome to the THOR Mining PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Nicole Galloway-Warland, Managing Director. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Alessandro. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Investor Meet Company presentation. I haven't given an Investor Meet Company presentation for over 6 months, so I thought it was a good opportunity to give you an update on THOR, our projects, and most importantly, give you an overview of upcoming exploration activities. We've had a busy 6 months. We've been drilling at our Alfred East Copper Project, Molly Hill Project, and at our Ragged Range Project in the Pilbara. We're excited to have the WA border back open and be boots on the ground undertaking exploration activities at Ragged Range. We currently have a team over there doing some on-ground exploration and mapping for our lithium targets in the north. And as you can see from this photo, this is our geophysics crew who are currently on the ground doing a high-powered electromagnetic survey over the Krona prospect, which is essentially over our nickel gossan. So we're certainly boots on the ground, undertaking a lot of exploration activities as we speak. For the presentation, I'm going to be switching my camera off so that you can have a bigger screen, and then I'll be switching it back on at the end for Q&A. So standard disclaimer. So THOR Mine is exploring for high-value commodities in global demand, so uranium, lithium, nickel, copper and gold. I like to think of these as commodities for the future. As the world transitions into low carbon emissions, so renewables, green energy, electrification, these commodities are certainly in high demand, with an increase in supply, and I don't see this changing in the near or mid-term future. So THOR is certainly leveraged for success. We have an exciting, diverse portfolio of projects with opportunities for shareholder value through discoveries as well as development of our projects. At our Ragged Range project over in WA, we're certainly leveraged for discovery success. With a diversity of commodity, we've got highly prospective lithium targets. We've got a 13-kilometre gold corridor of robust geochem targets. We've got a nickel gossan as well as copper gold in the northwest. We have 3 copper projects in South Australia. These are advanced projects with resources of over 400,000 tonnes of contained copper. And we're assessing and moving these forward with the intention of in-situ recovery. In the Northern Territory, we have our tungsten molybdenum project, and this is poised for development, or as I like to say, shovel ready. And then over in the US, we have 3 projects in Utah and Colorado, and we hope to be on the ground in US summer drilling those projects. So just from an investment case, we are poised for significant growth through discoveries as well as project development. We're focused on mineral discoveries for the future, as I said, so battery and critical metals. Our projects are all in portfolio. Our project portfolio is all in proven mining jurisdictions, so there's no sovereign risk. These are, ranked very highly on the Fraser Institute. And there's no foreseeable risk or issues with the jurisdictions we're working in. In particular, with our Ragged Range, this is an underexplored area but highly prospective for the lithium, nickel, uranium, gold and copper. And then over in the Northern Territory with our tungsten play, this is ready for development. We're well funded to advance our projects. And most importantly, we have a very experienced board and management team with a success track record. And this is really critical to move the projects forward. So just as a corporate snapshot, we're dual listed on the AIM as well as the ASX. Market cap sits at around £14 million. We have just under £2 million in the bank, no debt. And so we're in a strong corporate position with a focus on advancing our projects towards discovery and development success. So really creating shareholder value. So who is the board and management team? I'm the managing director with over 30 years industry experience, working from exploration through to mining in Australia, Eastern Europe and South America. With a technical background, we also have Mark McGough, who is based here in Australia, with an extensive level of experience in both industry and government. And then in the UK, with a finance and corporate background, we have our chairman, Mark Potter, and also a non-executive director, Alastair Clayton. So we have a really good balance of technical expertise as well as corporate and finance to drive the projects forward. So current activities. Over in the Pilbara at our Ragged Range project, as mentioned, we currently have a crew on the ground doing a high-powered fixed-loop electromagnetic survey. We're doing our final preparations for our upcoming RC program at Stirling Prospect. And concurrent to this, we're on the ground doing some mapping and geochem sampling for lithium as well as copper gold in the northeastern portion of the tenure. Over in the US at our uranium vanadium projects, we're focused on the Colorado side and we're in the final stages of drilling preparations for Wedding Bell. I'll be heading over later next week to finalise the drilling logistics. And then at our copper projects in South Australia, we have our Alfred East project where we're currently doing some hydrometallurgical work and we hope to be back on the ground in the second half of this year drilling. And at Kapunta, we're in the midst of doing a push-pull test. We've just completed the tracer component and we'll be moving into the lixiviant side of things in the coming weeks and moving towards a site environmental lixiviant test later this year. So really driving those resources forward. And at Molly Hill, as mentioned, this project is poised for development. So moving through the projects now. So Ragged Range, this is the one I think that has the best value of creating and being a company maker for THOR, with a lot of exploration, discovery opportunities to be made. The project's located in the East Pilbara granite greenstone terrain. We're in close proximity to very large-scale gold deposits. We've got Calidus's project to the north, the Warrawoona project, 1.2 million ounces. They've just done their first gold pour. And then we have De Grey's project in the northwest, the Hemi project with over 9 million ounces of gold. So we're in very favourable large-scale gold jurisdiction, and we have very similar geological settings and structurally favourable geology. For lithium, we have two of the world's largest hard rock spodumene deposits located in the Pilbara, Wodgina and Pilgangora. So again, we're in the right jurisdiction for lithium prospectivity, so targeting lithium, cesium, tantalum pegmatites. So if we just go down onto the tenements, we've got 5 tenements covering over just under 1,000 square kilometres. On the the western side, we have our 13-kilometre structurally controlled corridor or Stirling prospect. This sits on a thrust faulted contact between the ultramafics and the mafics, and through stream sediment and soil sampling, we've defined this 13-kilometre corridor with up to 2.2 grams per tonne gold. Just to the south of that, we have a nickel gossan or the Krona prospect, and this is where we're undertaking our current high-powered fixed-loop electromagnetic survey. In the northern portion of the tenure, we have our lithium targets, and then in the northeast, we have some historic high-grade copper and gold deposits, which we'll be following up in due course. So we have 100% control of the Kelly Greenstone Belt. So just looking at the lithium prospectivity, it's a very busy map, but I just wanted to highlight that the two world-class lithium deposits and also the other lithium deposits in the Pilbara are associated with the Split Rock Supersuite, which is essentially the red blobs of granites. And if you look at our Ragged Range area, we also have one of these red blobs, and it's never been explored for lithium prospectivity. So we're excited to be on the ground now testing that. So it's not so much the Split Rock Supersuite, it's actually the radius, the 5 to 10 kilometre halo around that. And this is commonly referred to as the Goldilocks zone. And this is where the enriched pegmatites sort of expand out of the granite body. And this is where we're currently on the ground mapping and sampling. We have three other areas of interest. In the centre, we've got some mapped pegmatites. So again, we're on the ground testing this to see if they're enriched lithium pegmatites. And then two other areas which we feel are favourable for lithium. So currently on the ground following these up. As mentioned, we're on the ground at our Krona prospect doing a fixed loop EM survey over the nickel gossan. This gossan was identified by the Geological Survey, and back in 2020 we were on the ground mapping the gossan and identified that it extends well over a kilometre, 100 metres wide, with elevated nickel and chrome. The other interesting thing is it also sits on the basal contact of the Dalton Suite, so above the felsic volcanics of the Wyman Formation. This is quite important from a nickel sulfide geological model. The fixed loop survey should take approximately another week, and then with processing we hope to have some news flow out in the next few weeks. The objective of the survey is to identify conductive bodies at depth which have the potential for being massive nickel sulfide mineralisation. And from there, it'll identify drill-ready targets which we can follow up with our RC drilling program in June this year. At our Stirling prospect, we did a maiden RC drilling program towards the end of last year. We unfortunately didn't complete that program, so we're aiming to be back on the ground in June to complete that program, but also build on the knowledge we learnt. We certainly identified some very interesting sericite, pyrite, fuchsite alteration along the contact, so we'll be following that up in June this year. So I'll have more information out to the market on that drilling program as we finalise that in the coming weeks. So over in the US, we have our uranium vanadium projects. With the current geopolitical situation as well as green energy, it's good to have a strong asset in the US as we see the domestic demand increase for uranium. The Senate is potentially going to sanction its import of uranium from Russia, which is over 18% of their supply. And the US also are about 30% nuclear. So as they want to increase their supply for their over 100 nuclear reactors, again, they need that domestic supply for uranium. So we have three projects in the US on the border of Utah and Colorado. So Wedding Bell, Radium Mountain, and Vanadium King. This is a very well-known province for uranium, the Uravan mineral belt, and was extensively mined during the 20th century, producing over 660 million pounds of vanadium and 85 million pounds of uranium. Has good infrastructure, and I think significantly we're very close to the White Mesa energy fuels processing plant, which has the potential to toll treat, which is something that we would consider moving forward. Our initial project is very much on the Wedding Bell, Radium Mountain or Colorado side. So this style of mineralisation is referred to as saltwash style, and it's essentially sandstone-filled paleochannels which host the uranium and vanadium. It's named after the geological unit in which the uranium and vanadium is hosted in. It's quite unusual to see the uranium and vanadium form, but we do have a Northern Territory analogy with the Bigelow deposit. This style of mineralisation is very high grade, and our field sampling identified grades up to 1.25% uranium and up to 3.5% vanadium. A lot of the current uranium mines are operating at a head grade of 0.02 to 0.05% uranium. So these grades here at our Colorado project are exceptionally high grade. The style of mineralisation is stacked tabular ore bodies, and these can be traced along strike and laterally over metres to kilometres. The uranium and vanadium form together, and the vanadium usually forms a much larger halo, so about a 5-to-1 sort of ratio. And the uranium forms in uraninite and coffinite, with the vanadium predominantly monazite and vanadium-rich aluminosilicates. And on the surface, you get a lot of carnotite. And the images here, you can see there's a photo of carnotite carrying about 1% uranium, 1.2% vanadium. And the series of photos, you can see the stacked sequence of the uranium mineralisation. The centre zone is the enriched uranium and vanadium, and then showing the wider vanadium halo. So this is taken at our Rim Rock prospect. So we have 3 areas that we are aiming to drill test: Rim Rock, Ground Hog, and Section 23. Rim Rock and Ground Hog are a long strike of historic workings, where we can easily trace the favourable stratigraphy along strike. Section 23 is an area that has never been tested, and we're the first company to have access into this area. So excited about really getting on the ground there, and fairly optimistic about the potential of intercepting high-grade uranium and mineralisation. The targets themselves are very shallow. They're 50 to 100 metres deep. So the drilling program itself is, very shallow holes, a fence line across the 3 projects. So moving on to our copper projects. As mentioned, we have interest in 3 copper projects. THOR itself is earning 80% equity in Alfred East. And then through our 30% equity in Enviro Copper, we have Kapunda and Alfred West project. We're exploring for shallow oxide copper mineralisation, with the objective of developing and mining them using in-situ recovery. And this is a low-cost production of copper and gold with a low environmental impact. The projects themselves are very close to Adelaide, within 1 to 2 hours drive, and very good infrastructure. In-situ recovery is an alternative to traditional open cut and underground mining. It's low cost and, as mentioned, low environmental footprint. There's no large volume of dirt being moved, which really not only has the environmental benefits, but also has a reduced cost from an operating as well as a capex. Enviro Copper as well as THOR have both received funding to advance these projects. Enviro Copper is not, in-situ recovery is not new to South Australia. We have 2 current ISR projects in the uranium space, and they've been mining for over 15 years. So we certainly have the local expertise in the area, as well as the regulatory system in place. ISR copper is also being developed in Arizona in the US with the Florence project, Van Dyke, as well as the Gunnison project. In-situ copper is really just a transition, taking it from the heat bleach phase to fully in-situ. At our Alfred East project, we have identified shallow copper oxide mineralisation. The map here shows the historic drilling. It was drilled for primary IOCG mineralisation, and companies in the past ignored the copper oxide mineralisation as they were drilling to test, for primary mineralisation. From that information, we generated a mineral resource of over 177,000 tonnes of copper and 71,000 ounces of gold. We feel, based on that initial our initial drilling and moving forward that we can significantly increase this resource. And I'll talk about our recent drilling program in the next slide, but I wanted to highlight that initial hydrogeological work has showed that the mineralisation is saturated. The groundwater is hypersaline, so it precludes agriculture or potable use, so it can only be used for industrial use. And our initial pump testing showed favourable results for in-situ recovery. From the hydrometallurgical work, we've just done some initial glycine lixiviant trials. So this is the solution that you would put into the ore zone to dissolve the copper. And this has shown favourable positive copper and gold recovery. And we'll be continuing to work on the hydrometallurgical side as we move forward. Just looking at some of the results from our initial drilling, we just tested one area in the northern portion of the mineralised domains. The colours are just for us as far as describing the domains. They don't have any context as far as change in grade, tonnage, etc. So initial drilling, we identified in hole 5 up to 73 metres at 1% copper, 20 metres at 2% copper. And this is from almost the surface, so from 6 metres. These are exceptionally high-grade copper results and would be ideal for any style of mining, whether it be open cut or in-situ recovery. The broad zones, though, within the oxide are very favourable for in-situ recovery. We'll be continuing to drill further to the north and to the south in our next phase of drilling, and we've identified that there's some key structural controls on the mineralisation which are increasing the grades associated with these structures. So we'll be following that up in the second half of this year. So one of the biggest benefits with in-situ recovery is the time frame from taking a project from exploration through to development and production. I've just got a rough time frame here showing the Kapunda project as well as Alfred East. At Kapunda, as I mentioned, we're in the midst of doing our push-pull testing. So we're about to move into the lixiviant phase of the push-pull test. And then from there move to the site environmental lixiviant test. From that test work, we actually start producing copper, and we can then scale up with the economics and add other well fields to move forward into copper commercial production. So the aim is to be moving into that phase in 2023 to 2024. At Alfred East, we're a little bit behind on that, and we hope to be doing some of the in-ground hydrometallurgical test work later this year and moving into the site environmental lixiviant test next year. The ISR system has a much lower capex and operating expense, and one of the benefits from that is also the fact that you can have an upscale or flexibility with your production. So as mentioned, with our testing of our initial well field, we can then add well fields onto that to upscale the production. And, you know, a conventional open cut or underground copper mine would probably take 10 to 20 years to get into production, as opposed to ISR, which can be into production within 3 to 5 years. So exciting days ahead on this. So our Molly Hill project. This is our most advanced project and is essentially shovel ready. The project's located in the Northern Territory, about 3 to 4 hours drive from Alice Springs. And what we are excited about is the government has kindly sealed the Plenty Highway, so we have a sealed road up to 20 kilometres from the project. The geology itself consists of 2 magnetite skarn bodies with a mineralisation in scheelite, molybdenite and chalcopyrite. Historically, a feasibility study was completed in 2018, which demonstrated profitable production with a low operating cost and early payback. In late 2018, the commodity price sort of fell, but we're now back up to beyond the 2018 prices. Molybdenum itself is double what it was in 2018, and certainly tungsten is trending higher than what it was in 2018. And we certainly know The tungsten itself is a critical metal, and the US is certainly wanting geopolitically safe supply of tungsten. The project itself is fully funded to move forward, and it has major project status with the Northern Territory government. So it's poised for development, and as THOR move to assess the development phase, we've been doing some on-ground exploration activities. Because the deposit itself is in a magnetite skarn, we've modelled the magnetics and identified a magnetic body to the south of the deposit, and we put some drill holes into that at the end of last year. We've also highlighted the image on your right is some other magnetic targets, which we'll be following up in due course, hopefully later this year. The results from that initial phase of drilling, unfortunately, have been delayed. We had some QA/QC issues with the drill core, and we've had to resubmit core for sampling. So there has been some delays. We already have a backlog in Australia with our assaying with the labs, but unfortunately this has exacerbated those delays. So I do hope to have some results to the market in the coming weeks. So next steps, just in summary, we're exploring for high value commodities, so commodities for the future. These are in proven mining jurisdictions. We're well funded to move the projects forward, and we have a strong pipeline of targets. We have year-round news flow, so while we're working on one area, we can be waiting for results in another area. And a very experienced board and management team to take these projects forward. So key work streams and upcoming news flow. As mentioned, we're on the ground doing our ground EM survey, so I hope to have some updates on the nickel prospectivity in the next few weeks. We are on the ground with our lithium exploration, so again hope to have some news out on some of those results in the coming weeks. And we'll be on the ground in late June with our Sterling follow-up RC drilling program. Over in the US, we'll be focusing on our RC shallow drilling program at our Wedding Bell and Vanadium King project in Colorado. As mentioned, I'll be heading over there late next week to finalise the logistics of the drilling, with drilling scheduled for the US summer. So certainly a lot of on-ground activities. And there will also be news flow from our Molly Hill as well as our Alfred East copper project. So in summary, that's thank you very much from the webinar point of view. I'll switch the camera back on now and I can move into the Q&A side of things.
Nicole, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated in the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while Nicole takes a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Nicole, we received a number of pre-submitted questions from investors, and I wanted to start off the Q&A session with these. The first one reads as follows. Will we be applying to get government funding as King Island Tungsten Mine did for Molly Hill development? Also, have we had contact with USA regarding sourcing tungsten from Molly Hill?
The answer is yes. We have been in discussions with the Northern Territory government as well as the Australian government for funding to move that project forward. And we certainly know that the US is looking to source and support as existing tungsten projects. So not exploration, but certainly to move projects forward. So we'll be closely monitoring that as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Do you have permits in place for all three uranium vanadium assets yet? I only saw that 2 had been attained so far.
Yes, so we do have county permits in place for Rimrock, Groundhog and Section 23. All 3 projects, these are on the Colorado side, are on BLM ground, but we did need to get San Miguel County permits for 2 of those projects. So we're now finalising our BLM bonds and permits, so should have those in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much. The next question reads as follows. In December 2021, you indicated that the company would be receiving assay results back for the Molly Hill project. There's been no update to this date on this project. Why not?
Look, I touched on it briefly. We did complete our drilling in December 2021, and then with drill core, cutting and processing, etc. It did take a little, there were a few delays getting it to the lab. And we have had some QA/QC issues with the drill core. So we have had to resubmit some samples and do some re-assaying on the core. Obviously, with tungsten, molybdenum, and chalcopyrite, they each need different analytical techniques. So there has been some delays on those samples, and I hope to have some news flow to the market shortly.
Thank you very much. The next question reads as follows. The company has advanced projects in Molly Hill and Alford East. Why is the company now focusing on new targets at Ragged Ranch with nickel and lithium? Do you think that as a small cap company generating no revenue, shareholder value is better spent concentrating on advanced projects?
Look, we are advancing all of our projects. To take the Molly Hill project forward will require a large capital. So the feasibility study suggested about 45 million to take it through development. So that's a big decision to progress that project, particularly for a small cap. For me, the Ragged Range project has the most or greatest opportunity for shareholder value through discovery. We've got some great prospective targets for lithium, nickel, gold, as well as copper gold, and I think that has the opportunity to be a company maker through discovery. We will be progressing, obviously, the Alford East project with the hydrometallurgical work and hope to be back on the ground later in the year. So we certainly are progressing those projects, but I think the WA border is open, so we're back on the ground in WA, and I'm certainly very excited and optimistic about our Ragged Range project and moving that to discovery success.
Thank you very much. And the final pre-submitted question reads as follows. Hi, Nicole. As you know, the deadline for the Colorado state to grant the wedding bell permits is Thursday, 2nd of June, 2022, which is exactly 17 days. Will you get the Colorado permits in time? As you know, there is no extension allowed, even if the Colorado state want to grant you the wedding bell permits after the 2nd of June 2022. By law, the state cannot. I assume you know that THOR Mining has had nearly 1 full year to get the permits, and if you don't get the permits by Thursday, the 2nd of June, THOR share price will fall.
Look, I'm very optimistic that we will have the BLM permits in place, which includes the Colorado permit. Within that time frame. It has taken over 12 months. The project themselves are on BLM ground, which is federal ground. So we were working closely with Colorado and the BLM to progress that. We were 99.9% complete when we realised that San Miguel County had a requirement for permits as well. So the federal and the state permitting was put on hold while we progressed the San Miguel County permitting. And this has taken some time, but it had to be done in a very logical, systematic process. And certain steps needed to be taken, and we had to wait, obviously, the required time to be allocated time slots at the various approval meetings. So it wasn't something that we could shortcut. We had to work with the San Miguel County and progress the permitting through that manner. And we're very happy and with the successful outcome. So yes, I'm very optimistic that we'll have all our permits in place in the time frame and be on the ground drilling this summer.
Nicole, that's great. And that actually concludes the pre-submitted questions. But as you can see, we've received a number of questions throughout today's presentation, and thank you to all the investors for submitting those. Could I just ask you to read out those questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you at the end.
Okay. So the first question is, are there still plans to IPO EnviroCopper? In short, look, we are looking at either IPOing or getting a joint venture partner in to progress that project. So yes, at this stage, there are plans to IPO the project. Next question, which commodities are THOR Mining going to prioritise as the market enters into a commodity bull run? Look, as I mentioned, we have a diverse portfolio of projects and focused on commodities of the future. Our uranium asset in the US will be progressing, as well as Ragged Range, our gold, nickel and lithium. So I feel, if anything, we're leveraged for the success as the commodities move forward. With in-situ recovery projects, what is your expected copper recovery rate with the right lixiviant? Question mark 50%. Look, no, I'd like to see it up higher, around the 70%. Like any project, it has to have commercial economic benefits. So we need to get that copper recovery up around at least the 70, if not higher percentage of recovery. With a share price at a 52-week low, thanks for reminding me, and so many projects, how are you looking to prioritise the field program? So at the moment, the priority is at our Ragged Range project, and this is where we're currently on the ground with our EM survey and our lithium mapping. In June, we'll be hitting the ground with our RC drilling program. Over in the US, we're obviously using consultants, so that project will be run sequentially or concurrent. And then at our Alfred East project, following on sort of mid-year, we'll be moving into our second phase of drilling. So, it's a matter of, our priority really is our uranium project and our Ragged Range project at this stage. So that's the final question.
Nicole, thank you very much. I think you've addressed all those questions you can from investors, and of course the company will review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback.
Sorry, Alistair, Alessandro, there were one or two questions right at the very beginning that I missed. If I could just, I'm happy to address those. A strong board and no debt. Will access to further funding help accelerate your work on ground and achieve your drilling, your targets sooner? Look, yes, of course, more funds, means more money can be spent on the ground, but we are not looking to do a capital raise in the short term. Next question is, THOR has ownership of Molly Hill for some time now. How realistic is a joint venture farming, sale or asset moving forward? Look, I think at the moment, if anything, Molly Hill with the critical mineral space is a project that has good potential to get a joint venture partner in or to drive that forward ourselves. Next question is, which project excites you most and which offers the greatest near-term potential? To me, it's Ragged Range. I think this has the greatest exploration discovery opportunities, and this has the potential to be a company maker. Over in the US, likewise, this is a very exciting project. I don't have any doubt that we will intercept high-grade uranium and vanadium. The question will be the thicknesses and the economics of those intercepts. But again, I'm very excited about those two projects. Can you please provide estimated timelines of when THOR's main projects will go into production? I sort of touched on the Alfred East project and where we're at, and looking at certainly driving that project forward towards development in 2024, with Kapunda being a bit closer in time frame to move into commercial production. Next question is, with all these potential high-value resources, isn't THOR greatly undervalued and therefore vulnerable for a takeover? Look, I fully agree. We're completely undervalued. I think we have an exciting, very diverse portfolio of projects and some great opportunities moving forward. Takeover, look, I can't really answer that question, but I'm very bullish about moving these projects forward and delivering shareholder value through discovery success and development of our projects. So yes, that's the last question. So thank you very much, Alessandro.
Nicole, thank you very much for that. And before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to yourself and the company, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Look, I'd like to thank you all for joining me for this webinar and to stay tuned. Obviously, with COVID, there have been some delays with borders, etc., but we are on the ground. We have a very systematic process to advance our projects. for discovery success as well as development potential. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Nicole, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close the session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Thor Mining PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.
Thanks.